Welcome, you're watching The Big Question. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. It's a meeting that could define the future of Indo-US relations. As Prime Minister Modi is all set to meet US President Donald Trump in Washington on February 13th. The stakes are higher than ever. Trade tensions, defense partnership, immigration policies and strategic alignments, every issue on the table has the potential to reshape global equations. But with Trump 2.0 doubling down on his America First agenda, India will have to navigate a far more transactional and unpredictable White House to maintain its Make in India stance. At the center of the discussions is trade. Trump wants greater market access for American goods and wants lower tariffs on American goods imported by India. In return, India is looking for tariff rollbacks and regulatory clarity in sectors like IT, services and pharmaceuticals. But Trump is known for playing hardball. Will India have to make unexpected concessions to secure a favorable deal? Can we escape tariffs? Defense cooperation is another crucial bargaining point. India wants access to advanced US military technology, while the US seeks greater Indian defense purchases and stronger security commitments. Talk around fighter jet, engine production, co-developing combat vehicles and deepening military alliances will be closely watched. But the most sensitive negotiation may be on immigration. The recent deportation of over 100 Indian nationals from the US has heightened concerns, and Modi is expected to push for stronger assurances on H-1B visas, an issue that directly affects India's tech workforce. However, Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration and stricter visa policies remains a non-negotiable for his administration. So will India be able to strike a balanced agreement? Will immigration be a major sticking point? These are some of the questions we are talking about today. Why the Modi-Trump meet is so crucial and so high stakes. Let's start with the conversation. Harshvardhan Shringla, former Foreign Secretary of India, first on my show. Mr. Shringla, thank you so much for your time right here on The Big Question. Just the fact that Prime Minister Modi will be the fourth foreign leader to meet President Trump since he took over just a few weeks ago, what does that tell us about how much the United States is prioritizing its relationship with India right now?
So Prime Minister Modi has been in touch with President Trump. If you recall that soon after he won the elections, Prime Minister Modi spoke to President Trump. Soon after he took over office on the 20th of January, Prime Minister Modi spoke to him on the 27th of January. So I think from that perspective, there has already been some exchanges between the two leaders. But of course, this is Prime Minister Modi's first visit under the Trump 2.0. And it is, from that perspective, important. It is also, as you correctly pointed out, one of the first international foreign visitors that President Trump will be receiving in his second term in office. And that is also significant because it indicates a priority in terms of the global sort of outreach that President Trump would wish to have. And an in-person meeting is definitely very important when it comes to the connect between leaders. Both President Trump and Prime Minister Modi attach a lot of importance to that one-to-one relationship that would set the momentum for relations between them and their global partners. So I think an early visit is an indication of the high priority that both countries attach to the relationship, and the fact that both the leaders have the desire to get down to business as early as possible, reflecting the relationship.
I think, Mr. Shringla, what also becomes crucial is the timing, and we've been speaking about this even from the perspective of equity investors. People in the markets have been watching this visit very, very closely because of the big fear on tariffs. And this meeting is taking place even as reciprocal tariffs are supposed to come into place in the United States. I'm just wondering why this becomes crucial. And on this reciprocal tariff business and this aspect, how does India stand vis-a-vis a lot of other nations that are now set to be impacted from President Trump's non-negotiable that we will tax you as much as you tax us?
Well, the issue of trade relationships is important because India is one of the United States' larger partners, but the US is India's largest export destination also. So from that perspective, that trade relationship is vital to both countries. President Trump has had a fairly, I would say, proactive first few weeks in office. He has increased tariffs, 25% tariffs on, or 10% tariffs on all Chinese imports. This is in addition to the 25% he levied in 2019. He started off by imposing tariffs on Canada and Mexico as well. He's threatening tariffs on the EU. But what is important is that he's levied global tariffs on steel and aluminium, which also affects us. So in that context, the visit is important because you need to have the leaders talking to each other on how they would, manage that expectation from the US side that there should be a more reciprocal arrangement with regard to tariffs, and how the two sides can again collaborate to make it a win-win situation when it comes to trade, investments, technology, and everything on the economic side of the relationship.
In your view, sir, how much does the personal camaraderie between the two leaders matter? Looking at what lessons we're learning from Trump 1.0, because clearly the leaders got along very well even then, and from the transcripts we're hearing and seeing and the reportage on their initial phone call, that camaraderie seems to have continued. We saw that in Namaste Trump, Howdy Modi, all of that playing through. How much does that make India's case even stronger?
So in Trump 1.0, by the end of that term of office of President Trump, I think the two leaders had established a very good rapport, very good chemistry, which I was able to witness firsthand. And I think that made a lot of difference when it came to the two leaders speaking to each other and coming to certain conclusions that were positive for the relationship. And I think I have no doubt that that personal chemistry will again click under Trump 2.0. There is every indication that the two leaders, attach the highest importance to that relationship. And Prime Minister Modi is going there early in President Trump's second, term in office, is an indication, as I said, of the importance both leaders attach to that relationship. And I'm sure that they will be able to discuss both areas of convergence and areas where we differ in a manner that would be positive to the relationship, whether it comes to trade and tariffs, whether it comes to technology, defense, or immigration, or anything that is in the form of issues that the relationship has to offer. But don't forget that the meeting is not just about specific bilateral issues. I think the two leaders will discuss global and regional issues of interest. And I think their perspectives and how to dovetail their policies that could be complementary would be very important also in that discussion.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Shringla, for speaking with us. That was former Foreign Secretary of India, Harshvardhan Shringla. To speak on this further, I'm joined now by Taranjit Singh Sandhu, former Ambassador of India to the United States, and Nicholas Nugent, British journalist and former BBC editor, London. Welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for your time. Ambassador Sandhu, let me start with you. It's interesting the way we here in India are looking at the Trump presidency compared to many other nations across the world who are looking at the Trump presidency maybe with trepidation, sometimes with fear. We here are looking at it quite positively. We've largely come to the conclusion that the Trump presidency is good from an Indian perspective. Do you share that view?
I think, Tamanna, if you look at our earlier experience in 2014, in 2017, in 2020, and now it's 2025, I think the India-US relationship has transformed into a partnership, and there is a certain amount of confidence. Look, there are going to be challenges, there is no doubt, but that also provides opportunities.
Okay. In terms of those challenges, and let me come to those challenges first, a follow-up for you, Ambassador Sandhu. How big a challenge are these tariff statements, if at all, from an Indian perspective?
So look, certainly there is a challenge, and this is not the first time. Of course, he has been speaking much more in detail, but there is an element which is often underlined, and it certainly has an impact. That is what you say is a climate of uncertainty globally. Now, in my understanding, uncertainty or unpredictability is a strategy. And there is a complicated global reality today. There are problems of economy, there's problem in Ukraine, Russia, you see, Middle East, China, etc., etc. So he's basically, if you take a look and if you take a serious look at President Trump 2.0, he has got elected on a domestic agenda. And therefore, his focus is essentially domestic. And if you look at any of his orders, any of his statements, you can see impact of it in domestic roots.
Nicholas Nugent also with us. I wonder how you see the India-US relationship right now, Mr. Nugent, and with the context that Prime Minister Modi will be the fourth leader to visit the US and visit the White House after Trump has come back to power in the first few weeks, and this meeting coming in at a very crucial time when the conversation is about reciprocal tariffs, and we're still waiting to see what those reciprocal tariffs look like for various nations and across product classes.
Well, I think in a way you answered part of that question yourself by pointing out, as I was going to, that he is the fourth leader to meet the new American president. And I think that's quite an honor. I mean, no European leader, for example, has met Mr. Trump so far since he took office, which is less than a month ago. So to be getting in there after three and a half weeks is really quite distinguished. And I would point out that two of the leaders, that's Mr. Modi, Prime Minister Modi, and the Prime Minister of Japan, are members of the quadrilateral grouping with America. I expect the fourth member, Australia, to come along soon. And I think that's one of the issues that will be discussed. I know we're not allowed to call the quadrilateral an alliance. It's called a partnership, but it's very definitely a symbol of those countries' foreign policy, in particular towards China. So I'm sure that'll be high on the agenda. But let me add a bit that I think not only is he the fourth leader, but I think the visit is being watched far wider than in India, because we are all trying to gauge Mr. Trump, version 2, as you're putting it, because one thing that hasn't changed is unpredictability. We don't quite know what Mr. Trump stands for, but what is quite clear after 3.5 weeks is that foreign policy is very high on his priorities, and especially perhaps trying to stop the two raging wars that are going on. And I think the timing of Mr. Modi's visit is absolutely crucial. And I'm sure that the fact that Mr. Modi and indeed India have a close relationship with Russia will perhaps dominate the conversation between the two leaders.
Will Russia dominate the conversation? Ambassador Sandhu, I'd like your take on this, because you were, of course, ambassador to the US during the Biden years. And I'm just wondering, what were the sticking points then in that equation and in that sort of chemistry between the two leaders? Do you see any of those now translating or following through to the Trump administration?
So Tamanna, just to clarify to you, I was also the ambassador during the last 1 year of President Trump.
Yes.
And had brought him in.
You've seen both, yes.
Yeah, I had brought him in here in February of 2020 on that visit, which everybody noticed. But I'm going to slightly disagree with Nick. The relationship, as I said, is much wider. And as Prime Minister himself has indicated, there are going to be 5 broad areas. So yes, trade is important. And I think the most critical aspect there, which we are reading about, is essentially the imbalance or the surplus of 45 billion. Compared to many others, it's not that much. But I think here is where is the opportunity. You know that President Trump prides himself as a deal maker, as a pragmatic deal maker. So there are going to be issues regarding tariffs, but there is also an issue to access to US market for many of the Indian companies. So a deal, a possibility of cutting a deal opens up here. Then there is also the issue of defense. Look, US has emerged as an important pillar for Indian defense products. And there is a requirement for top of the line products. And when I say top of the line, I mean top of the line, and certainly favorable terms. And what we talk of is tech transfer, co-production, and of course, operational and logistic cooperation between the two is already happening. So this would get increased much more. You are aware that there is a 10-year agreement, framework agreement, which was first signed in 2005. Then it got extended in 2015. Now, 2025 is the time when that will be reviewed. So this time again, there is an opportunity to make a more ambitious framework agreement. And then energy. You know, India is an important importer of hydrocarbons. And you know, US is a major producer today, and it's also becoming a major exporter. Now, there is a great room for collaboration here. Now, that certainly is going to be part of the discussion. And sub B of that is nuclear power. You know that SMR is much in vacancy these days. I mean, it's been written already in the statement. So that's also going to be one area that will be discussed. And finally, I know it's extending, but I want to tell you that that room is going to be full of a lot of discussions and technology and parts of technology. Look, I said IT, new emerging technologies, cyber, etc. You know, even startups come in that. And finally, the supply chain resilience. Please remember that it was Trump 1.0 when supply chain resilience came into focus because of the COVID. So that's also going to be part of the discussion. So I will say that broadly, these 5 areas are going to be important.
You know, I'm wondering, and of course the 5 areas you've mentioned are absolutely right, but I just want to take this question to Nicholas Nugent. I'm just wondering how the India-US relationship should be seen in the context of Trump and his focus on China. So now, it's very clear that as far as AI race, DeepSeek is concerned, there is an issue. There are already one set of tariffs on China. But then look at the solution he got in for TikTok. How do you see that equation forming, and this thought that India is the more reliable default partner when it comes to the US shoring up against China's growing reach?
Well, I'm not sure I see it like that. You're rather suggesting that it's China or India and who predominates in American thinking. And I don't think there's any question there that the relationship is considerably closer with India than with China. But I don't think this is an exercise in ganging up, because India perhaps is solving its differences with China. I speak cautiously. I spend a lot of time in India, but the ambassador would know far more about the status of India's current relations with China. And every indication is that Mr. Trump wants to solve relations with China, or improve relations, I should say, because it is, of course, an important trading partner. And to come back to tariffs, the subject of tariffs, I mean, what we're seeing on the tariff threat so far is that Mr. Trump's using that to solve other issues, which is why he appears to have backpedaled a bit on Canada and Mexico once he got concessions from them. So I rather suspect the same will be true of China. So tariffs is not purely an economic issue. It's a political issue for the president to try to ease concessions. Now, how that'll work with India, I don't know. I can't speculate. I'm very interested in what the ambassador said. I wonder if he helped write the briefing paper for Mr. Modi's visit. But I would like to ask the ambassador, don't you think India's purchase of oil from Russia will be on the agenda? Because that's something that is rather upsetting shall we call it the Western alliance, those who are more sympathetic to Ukraine than to Russia. And I think personally, I think we're going to get moves on the Russia-Ukraine issue within the next few days. That's another reason why Mr. Modi's visit at this time is absolutely critical, because if Mr. Trump found Mr. Modi sympathetic to his efforts to solve the issue, that is key. You know, India now matters quite a lot on the international stage, and that's why this meeting is so important.
I agree, absolutely important. But let me take that question to Ambassador Sandhu. With the point of view that I sat down recently with the Union Minister for Oil, Hardeep Puri, and I asked the Minister this question, and he was very clear that we have reduced drastically the amount of oil coming in from Russia. There is a lot more supply than demand. But Ambassador Sandhu, is this a sticking point? Is Ukraine, Russia and India's purchases of oil a sticking point? And do you expect that to come out during the meeting?
Look, I can understand Nick's questioning. Let me first answer on the Russia front. Look, you have already got it from the oil minister, what aspects, how it's going. But I just want to draw your and Nick's attention. You know, I'm sure you would have observed on this Sunday, there was an interview by the US NSA, Mike Waltz. And in that, he mentioned about a forthcoming visit of Prime Minister Modi. And he also mentioned about India playing a role in Russia-Ukraine crisis. So it points towards that. I want to say something on China, because look, China is going to be a very interesting issue in US. And 3 points I want to mention here. One, do keep in mind that the strategic team of President Trump or Trump 2.0 are certainly known for their positions on China. So whether you look at NSA or you look at the new Secretary of State and some of the other experts there, so that's one pressure which will come in. On the second side, and here is a little new dimension. You know, President Trump always remembers about the election in 2020. And one of the reasons why it got so complicated was because of COVID. And you know whom he holds responsible for COVID. I think even in the current, if you see the latest statements by CIA chief and others, I think that points to that. Finally, there is also going to be a lot of commercial pressure. And let me not in any way, and that in fact points to the TikTok issue. And also you are aware that some of the prominent businessmen are very keen that relationship with China should be normalized. So all these pressures are going to come in on him. But as far as India and United States are concerned, look, as Nick already mentioned about, that Quad and what kind of issues Quad has touched upon and the focus which Quad got. In fact, one of the first meetings which Secretary of State had was with External Affairs Minister and the other Quad partners. So again, this is going to be something which needs to be watched, and I'm sure experts like Nick will watch it closely. Yes. There are going to be competing pressures on President Trump. Right. So let's see where it goes.
Well, we should talk again once it's clear what's on the agenda and once this meeting is concluded. But for now, thank you so much to both of you for joining us on this episode of The Big Question, where we're setting the stage for what will definitely be a very, very crucial meet. Not just because of the prominence of the two nations, the leaders, but also because of the timing and how all stakeholders are watching it so closely. Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining us, but we'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place.